If you want your family to be as resilient as possible, it's important to take some time today and visit mendoready.org, where you can look up your pre-established evacuation zones on our current emergencies map. You can also find important tools to help maintain your situational awareness, such as the Alert California wildfire cameras and the Caltrans road conditions cameras. We hope you'll take some time today to prepare so that your family can be Mendo ready. Thank you.
Personally, I think everybody could benefit from the home visiting programs.
I think that as a parent now, I'm grateful for support more than I was before.
I filled out that form not knowing what I was doing. I am very, very grateful that I did it because it's really helping me a lot.
Bueno, creo que por mi parte esperaba algo totalmente diferente, como un programa más frío, por decir algo, no tan cercano a la familia. Y a través del programa nos hemos dado cuenta que también pasa a ser una familia con nosotros porque nos apoya en los momentos difíciles o cuando nos hemos visto en dificultades.
Well, I was a new mom and I had no experience taking care of a newborn.
There isn't like a book on how to raise a kid.
We come from like a lot of family history of, drugs, violence, alcoholism, so we didn't want our daughter to experience any of that.
The thought that a parent was supposed to be loving, nurturing, supposed to be there for their kid, provide food, shelter, joy, and going in, becoming a parent for her, I had no clue how to provide that.
Cómo pensar educarla, cómo educar a un hijo porque pues nosotros nunca, es la primera vez que íbamos a ser padres.
What I think parents should know about home visiting is that you can learn a lot of new things and tips and tricks, how to take care of the baby and what to do, and if you're, stuck in a routine and everything being monotonous, like they give you new resources and new tools how to handle parenthood.
It was nice to have them kind of guiding me, even though I was not a first-time mom. I felt like a first-time mom.
It totally blew my mind over time. So much information that I had no idea about. She was straightforward when, teaching me this stuff and answered any of my questions. Just a really positive experience.
What I think that parents could benefit with the program is just having someone here for you, especially for first-time parents. It can be very isolating and it can be very lonely, and having the home visitor changes that and it feels very good.
For me, having a home visitor is like having a second mom there.
A lot has changed. I'm definitely more knowledgeable taking care of her. And I know that anytime I need advice or help from somebody, I can just call her.
It's just that little positive nudge to, hey, I'm noticing something, let's find a way how to change it. And she's like, you know what, Amanda, let's pick you up, dust you off.
Planning Commission,
And let's
December
go
21st,
over
2023 meeting is being called to order. And this is a hybrid meeting, and okay. Today's meeting is a hybrid meeting of the Planning Commission with the participants both in person and digitally. The public may participate digitally in meetings by sending comments to pbscommissions@mendocinocounty.gov or orally via telecomment in lieu of personal attendance. All public comment will be made available to the commissioners, staff, and the general public after processing by staff and can be viewed as attachments to this meeting agenda on the Planning Commission agenda page. To submit public comments via telecomment, please use the telecomment form found at www.mendocinocounty.gov/government/planning-building-services/meeting-agendas. Could we have a roll call vote?
Commissioner Babini.
Here.
Commissioner Jones.
Present.
Commissioner Purnell.
Here.
Commissioner Pollan.
Here.
Chair Wiedemann.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay. Do we have determination of legal notice?
Yeah, the matter on the agenda has been properly noticed.
Okay. And I will ask in item number 3, the director's report, if we have anything from the director. Good morning.
Good morning, Julia Krog, Planning and Building Services Director, and it's very nice to see all 5 of you here today. Thank you for showing up so close to the holidays as well. But at the last meeting, I had announced that we have a new assistant director at Planning and Building Services. So I have asked him to come in today. So stepping up to the podium is John Burks, our new assistant director at Planning and Building Services. And I'm going to ask him to say a few words about himself. And I wanted to get, so you can put a face to the name and know who you may be speaking with in the future as well.
Thank you.
Hold on, John. Let us turn on the microphone so we can hear you.
I could yell. If
yeah.
You might have to, John, you might have to stand a little closer to that mic.
Absolutely. Thank you. Since they've rearranged the desk, I'm still getting used to the etiquette. Good morning, Commissioners. My name is John Burks, and I am your Planning and Building Services Assistant Director. And I come from Sacramento. I moved up here in 2019. I started in code enforcement with planning and building. And over time, I've done a few different projects. I went to the executive office for a short time, and the director of Planning and Building Services was nice enough to have me back. So thank you for the opportunity to serve you. I'm a Scorpio, and I like long walks on the beach. And I'm here if you ever were to need me, and I'm sure we'll be interacting, as I fill in from time to time. I'm always a phone call away.
Can you tell us a little bit about what your responsibilities are?
Yes, absolutely. So I think what I bring to the table that I'm most passionate about is process management. And that's what I did for the executive office, and I'm still doing through the Golden Gate Bridge Initiative. And so for planning and building, obviously it's a highly process-oriented system from taking things in. Of course, you're part of the system as well. And so that's what I hope to really contribute, and what I'm in charge of at this moment in time is to manage those types of things to see if we can create a more fluid, more responsive, customer-driven environment there. And I think that we're going to be very successful in 2024. And dare I say, we will be the gold standard for the county moving forward, if we're not already.
Well, that is just super awesome news, because I have to say, as someone who's related to someone in the building trades, a contractor, there's some opportunity for improvement in terms of building permit processing.
You know, that's what I hear, but
good.
I want to be the tip of the spear on that, and I think that those results will be evident in, you know, everyone's personal experiences as they interact with our department. So I'm very much looking forward to the opportunity, and it's going to get exciting.
Awesome. Yeah, welcome.
And also, I'd encourage you too to look at our metrics page on, you know, that we've recently added to the Planning and Building Services website. So there's a place where we publish all the issued building permits, but now we've added another layer that talk about like lead time, our inventory of projects right now. It's really going to be a transparent, interactive way, especially for, you know, people in positions like yourselves to understand what the department is faced with, and when we make improvements, those will be reflected, you know, in those charts. So I just think that there's so many positive things that are happening. It's just going to be easier for all of you, and certainly for staff, and most importantly, the customer.
Yeah. One suggestion you might consider doing, I used to be the community development director for the city of Fort Bragg.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I found was really helpful is to have an automatic SurveyMonkey customer satisfaction tool after each interaction that would be anonymous to the customer, so that they can provide feedback on you know, whether or not they heard different stories from different planners or different building inspectors, the processing time, the ease of communication, all of that. It's not so much to do a gotcha or anything like that as to just identify opportunities for improvement. Sure. And I found it to be extremely helpful with all of my staff. And frankly, when people know they're getting evaluated, they put in a little extra.
Well, I believe that what gets measured gets better.
Yeah, exactly.
And so that's a very excellent suggestion that I'm taking to heart. So, and I'll work with the director in IT to see what we can do. And I think that might have already been on your radar, as a matter of fact.
Cool. Okay. Excellent.
Anything else for me?
Welcome aboard as
Thanks.
Assistant Director. And given that the Building Amnesty Program just opened up again for a year, do you have anything special planned for that? Either just to promote, market, make it easier, just curious if you've got anything up your sleeve.
Yeah, so we're in the early stages right now. You know, I know that there has been some community outreach, and I'm not sure if we did get around to doing any kind of press release activity, but that's mostly, I think, going to be focused in the new year, fresh start. You know, March is when the busy season starts to pick up, so we're hoping to get ahead of that and really make sure that the community is aware. And we have had some applicants come in, so I'm thankful for that. So we'll continue to promote that as much as possible. Because now's the time. If anybody's listening, now's the time. Just saying.
Well, I'm very excited to work with you again. I'm fortunate that I've gotten to work with John in the past, so I'm very happy to see that you're in planning and building so that we can, you know, help move processes a little bit more efficiently. So I know that it helped in cannabis, so I'm excited to see it work in planning and building too.
Yeah, and any feedback you have, you know, because you have a lot of experience in that world, I'd love to have it.
And I would like to just add you know, opening up this 1-year window for cleaning up, you know, unpermitted buildings. I think it's important, and several people have called me and asked me, well, what does that actually mean? And I said, you have to really find out that you're just dealing with the actual buildings and not a zoning violation. And I think the county, we could do better in doing a blurb, whether it's online, even clarifying what that is, because people don't quite understand the difference of, you know, when we're talking zoning issues, right? Setbacks. I mean, there's a lot of zoning issues people have no understanding of, right?
Yeah.
And they may have more dwellings on their property, or cabins or cottages, whatever is out there. And instead of wasting necessarily their time or the county's time, if they do have an infraction, so to speak, you might want to give them some advice. I don't know what the legal aspect of that is, but, you know, just to move things along.
And my general recommendation to add to that too is that anybody's welcome to call and look at their property with, you know, any of our staff to talk about what their options are. You know, we're not asking you to commit to anything, you know, unless there's an existing like complaint that would have code enforcement's involvement. That's not what we're here to do. Is we want to talk about the information and the options. If you are concerned, and you know, it is Mendocino County, you know, properties change hands over time, and the history is not always clear when, you know, that purchase is made. We'd love to help with that. Just give us a call. We'll talk you through, you know, what we think is there versus what maybe you could tell us is there, and then what to do after that to become compliant. It increases the property value. The more compliance we have in our county, the lower our fire insurance will be. You know, there's a lot of benefits to that. So I would just ask, give us a shot, give us a call, and let's talk about the specifics as it pertains to the property with, you know, no real commitment beyond that.
And if I may, for the commission, if you want to discuss the amnesty program further, that should be a discussion that we could agendize for a future meeting. But since we're under the director's report, we should probably wrap up on the conversation regarding the amnesty program.
I think you're right. Well, thank you, and welcome aboard.
Well, thanks for having me.
The Planning Commission. There you go.
And that concludes my director's report, and thank you very much.
All right.
We went a little sideways, didn't we?
Agenda item number 4, matters from the public. Members of the public are welcome to address the Planning Commission on items not listed on the agenda, but within the jurisdiction of the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission is prohibited by law from taking action on matters not on the agenda. Individuals wishing to address the Planning Commission under matters from the public may do so via email or Zoom. For information on each of these methods, call the Planning and Building Department at 707-234-6650 or visit mendocinocounty.gov/government/buildings-services/meeting-agendas. All correspondence will be attached to the item and made available online on the Planning Commission agenda page. If any members of the public logged into the Zoom meeting wish to speak under public expression and have not completed the telecomment form, please use the raised hand feature to allow staff to add you to the meeting. Do we have any requests for telecomment under public expression?
I haven't received any.
No?
I have not received any.
All right. And do we have any public in the room who wish to speak by public expression?
And for the record, I have no one on Zoom either.
Okay, and nobody else on Zoom. Seeing so, then we move on to, I'll close that out, and we move on to agenda item number 5, which is our consent calendar. We have the Planning Commission meetings for December 7th, 2023. I'm going to ask if there's any commissioners who have any revisions or comments regarding those minutes.
I have a minor spelling correction, I believe. And that is, I believe Rex Jackman should be Rex, R-E-X, from Caltrans. I wasn't at that meeting, but I've worked with Rex.
Do we have any other comments from any commissioner? Okay. Seeing none, I invite a motion. Oh, excuse me. I have to open public comment. Seeing, that's what they're saying. And seeing none, I'll close public comment. And may I have a motion?
I would move that we approve the consent calendar as amended.
Do I have a second?
Second that.
May I have roll call?
Commissioner Babini?
Yes.
Commissioner Pollan?
Yes.
Commissioner Jones?
Yes.
Commissioner Purnell?
Yes.
Chair Wiedemann?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
All right. Let's move on to agenda item number 6A, regular calendar. GP 2021-0002/R, 2021-0005, Tally Dim. Amendment to the coastal land use map on number 17, Mendocino, and coastal zoning map to establish a visitor servings accommodation and services VAS inn and / bed and breakfast accommodation to a 1C star combining district to the existing subject parcel zoned RR5, rural residential RR5. And I'm going to open the public hearing. And do we have any correspondence via telephone calls on this?
We did not receive any correspondence on this item.
All right. And then may we have a staff presentation, please?
Project Planner Steven Schweitzer here. Good morning and welcome everyone. Good morning, Planning Commissioners. As mentioned, this is an amendment to Coastal Land Use Map number 17, Mendocino, and the Coastal Zoning Map to establish a visitor accommodations and services inn and bed and breakfast accommodation referred to as asterisk 1C combining district. The proposed district is in the town of Little River, and it is approximately 1,300 feet to the south of Van Dam Beach State Park. As mentioned, the subject parcel is currently zoned rural residential, and the subject parcel is also within the larger Little River coastal planning area. So that captures land use map number 17, Mendocino, as well as number 18. Sure. All right. Can you hear me now? Great. So for a little context here, the asterisk 1C combining district allows for a maximum of 10 units. Future sites are designated on the land use map plans with an asterisk followed with a letter C. So these conditional facilities are also subject to a coastal use permit for further development. And I would like to note that the applicant has applied for a said use permit that is on hold with our office pending the action of this project before the commission today. So you're probably asking, what are the minimum requirements for establishing a visitor accommodation services combining district? So the Coastal Element Policy 3.74 provides the following. Any visitor serving facility not shown on the land use plan maps shall require a land use plan map amendment, and no development more intense than a single family residence shall be allowed on such site. Beyond that, there are some other items for consideration for the Planning Commission's review today. Those being Coastal Zoning Code Chapter 2436 for visitor accommodation services, and that in part provides an analysis of a suitability of a project site, including the following items: water availability, septic disposal capabilities, environmental constraints, and surrounding visitor servicing facilities within the area. So with the first two of the list, let's dive into those. Water and wastewater. So the project site is located in the marginal water resource area. So this is mapped on the coastal groundwater study as areas that are developed or where water is of limited availability. Currently on site, a well serves both the project site as well as the parcel to the north. In addition to that on-site well, there is a 10,000 gallon water storage tank. The applicant did submit a proof of water test with the application submittal that demonstrated a 2.2 gallon per minute, or the equivalent of 3,168 gallons per day from the well. As for wastewater, the applicant also submitted a site evaluation report from a certified soil scientist, that evaluated 13 soil profiles. Of those 13 soil profiles, profile 5 and number 11 were identified as potential locations for a gravity-fed septic system. The certified professional soil scientist also requested a waiver from the standard 60-inch depth to a 25-inch depth for the leach field, and that is covered in more detail in the staff report. There is a soil profile description to the right here on the screen, and that kind of details the water table as well as some of the other items of those soils. So, in-depth analysis was captured in the staff report, but for the discussion today, I wanted to provide a brief breakdown of some of the wastewater flow and the water usage that's projected for this use. So the proposed use is projected to have a 900 gallon per day water usage. The existing use on the parcel to the south has a 750 gallon per day water usage. So in that proof of water test, the analysis also provided an additional water usage of 100 gallons per day per parcel, so that totals 200 gallons per day, for a grand total of 1,850 gallons per day. So as mentioned before, the existing well has demonstrated a flow rate of 2.2 gallons per minute, or the equivalent of 3,168 gallons per day. So based on that provided information, staff finds that the site could accommodate the necessary water and wastewater needs for a future inn and bed and breakfast visitor accommodation services. Environmental constraints. So reviewing the project site to see if there's a sensible building envelope for a potential future use. So the applicant had submitted biological and botanical surveys that revealed 5 environmental sensitive habitat areas. So 3 of those habitat areas were identified as wetlands, and 2 of which were identified as sensitive plant species. So I'll break down those 5 ESHA here. So we have ESHA number 1, which is an Army Corps of Engineers 3-parameter wetland that is located on the eastern portion of the property. So that 3-parameter is garnered from vegetation, presence of soil, as well as saturation of said soil. ESHA number 2 is a 1-parameter, or what our office classifies as, say, a coastal act defined wetland. So any of those 3 that were mentioned before, their presence would classify this as a coastal act wetland. So this one is located to the property on the southwest, off the property to the southwest, excuse me. And we have ESHA 3, which is a freshwater forested scrub wetland. So this is a national wetland inventory. So that is on the northern property line running into the Pacific Ocean. Apologies, I don't have a photo for ESHA number 4, but that is a sensitive habitat or plant species, so I say. That is a Mendocino coast paintbrush. So that is located on the bluff tops on the western edge of the property. And as for ESHA 5, we have the bluff wallflower, which is also located on the bluff tops on the western edge of the property. So right here is a map that was included in the staff report and application submittals. And this details, apologies on if it's blurry, but the 100-foot and 50-foot buffer areas for the identified ESHAs. So if you can see my cursor here, this area in the center here is compliant with a 100-foot buffer for these identified ESHA. So if we go further with a reduced buffer, 50 feet would be all of this area here. So that definitely significantly increases the building envelope with a reduced buffer.
Could I just ask you to clarify, in the staff report, the applicant is asking for some areas with 50 and some areas with 100, and since I didn't have the botanical study, I couldn't really tell where
Sure.
those are on this map.
Well,
so I understand it.
Sure. To address that, so there right now, the project before you is for a combining district, so there's no development that's going to be captured with this. So this is a mere land use map change allowing for a proposed future use. So when evaluating this, staff is determining whether there's an appropriate building site. The further environmental review capturing this reduced buffer would be captured with the use permit. So having any reduced buffers would also require, say, concurrence with CDFW, which I cover in some future slides. But there is an existing driveway that is on the site that is within the ESHA buffers. So our county code does allow for development to, say, be sustained if it's existing and it doesn't meet current buffers. So did that answer your question, or?
Sort of. No, I get that there's no development right now. I'm just, from the perspective of rezoning it, what are we talking about in terms of, from this botanical study, what would be the developable area? And I understand that Fish and Wildlife hasn't concurred on the request for the 50-foot.
Right.
I was just trying to get a sense of which ones were 50 and which ones were 100 from the applicant's perspective, that's all.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I think that the applicant did provide me this morning that they have a presentation that can kind of go in more detail regarding the proposed building envelope further down the road with the associated use.
Thank
you.
And if I may just briefly, I will note too, on pages 6 and 7 of the staff report, you also have the discussion of the different ESHAs and the buffers, and it does note where reduced buffers are requested.
But those don't match
Oh,
with
on the
this map.
mapping here, I understand. Sure.
So I don't know, that was just my question.
Sure.
But it's not a big deal. It's fine.
Sure. Well, the 100-foot buffer is this center area here, and then the 50-foot buffer from all of the identified sites would be the second ring here.
Right.
So if that provides a little bit more clarity. But moving right along. So as I just covered, Mendocino County Code, Chapter 2496, does prescribe some standards for determining appropriate ESHA buffer widths when a 100-foot ESHA buffer cannot be maintained. So in short, what that looks like is concurrence with the Department of Fish and Wildlife that no take will occur on any identified resources on the site. And as detailed on the staff report, the Department of Fish and Wildlife did provide comment and did attend several site visits with staff, and they have deferred their comments to the use permit stage to address any of the buffers or, say, associated mitigation measures to address those reduced buffers. So with all of that, staff does find that the site could accommodate a sensible building envelope for future development, contingent on future review and adherence to the standards in Chapter 2496. So, the surrounding visitor accommodation services. As mentioned before, the property is within the South Central Coast region, and the Coastal Element Table 3.72 details that there's 661 existing visitor accommodation services units within this region. Also on that table, there are an additional 210 conditional designated with the letter C visitor accommodation units. So those are subject to a use permit for, say, a future build out. And for a grand total, there are 871 visitor accommodation services units identified within the South Central Coast region. Within a 2-mile radius of the project site, there were identified 10 visitor accommodation services sites. So those include inns, bed and breakfasts, motels, hotels, campgrounds, restaurants, as well as resorts. So approximately 100 units were within a 2-mile radius. And as we covered before, the asterisk 1C allows for a maximum of 10 units. So applying this combining district would allow for a potential build out up to 10 maximum units. So further discussion on this, the California Coastal Act does give priority to recreational uses, as well as encouraging the provisions for their supporting facilities. So the associated use permit, for context, is requesting a 5-unit inn rather than, say, going up to that full 10-unit amount that would be allowed within their combining district. And in many cases, an inn can be barely distinguishable from a single-family residence. So this is captured in detail in the coastal element section, talking about these visitor accommodation services and whether certain uses such as campgrounds or RV parks would require visual screening or further review. The applicant also submitted some occupancy and average daily rate metrics to demonstrate some demand in the area. That was captured in detail in the staff report. And just to briefly cover that today, a 68% occupancy rate average, as well as an average daily rate of $414.54. And I believe that the applicant has some further information on that in their presentation. So with all of that, staff does find that the future site could sustain a visitor accommodation services combining district by the provided market conditions. As for environmental protection, so you probably saw on the notice as well as in the staff report that this is a statutory exemption. So pursuant to CEQA section 15, 265C, statutory exemptions are for the adoption of coastal plans and programs. The burden of CEQA is shifted from the local agency, say Mendocino County, to the Coastal Commission for any further review of these items. As mentioned throughout the presentation and in the staff report, further environmental analysis would occur with the associated use permit for the actual development of the said proposed 5-unit bed and breakfast. So, last item, before I give it back to the commission for review and the applicant for their presentation, staff's recommendation. By resolution, the Planning Commission makes its report and recommendation to the Board of Supervisors, recommending the approval of the proposed amendment to Coastal Land Use Map number 17 and Coastal Zoning Map to establish a visitor accommodation and services and in bed and breakfast accommodation referred as *1C, combining district to the existing subject parcel. And with that, I can entertain any further questions.
Thank you for the beginning of your report. So I'm going to just call on the commissioners if we have any questions, and I'll start with Commissioner Paulin.
I guess this question isn't for now, but this is later. But so, for the CEQA review that would happen with the associated use permit, the Coastal Commission would be obviously consulted on that, and they would weigh in on any concerns that they have at that point.
Correct.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
And this project referral was also sent to the Coastal Commission. So as of this morning, our office has not received any comments for this proposed land use amendment to the maps.
Okay. Thank you. That's all for now.
Did you say you haven't received any comments?
Correct.
Not?
We have not received any comments from the Coastal Commission regarding this project proposal before you today.
Okay. Commissioner Parnell?
No questions from me. Thank you for a good presentation.
Babini?
None for me yet. I do want to listen to the applicant's presentation.
And Commissioner Jones?
I have a few, you know me. I love to noodle these things. So it's interesting to me because I've done some larger LCP amendments with the Coastal Commission, and the fact that you're not required to do CEQA doesn't release you from the obligation to do all the environmental studies before you submit the application to the Coastal Commission. So their action is considered CEQA equivalent, but they rely on the agency to provide them with all the background studies, et cetera, for the project. And then I'm just, for everybody's edification, because some stuff isn't here, and I'm not really sure So like just from the development down the road perspective, the things that I think, and I'm not sure that they need to be looked at right now, but they are concerns for me, and that is that little stretch of Highway 1 is a little speed race way for people. People love going on it fast because there's a little whoop-de-whoop and whoop-de-whoop, and I've just noticed people drive it very fast, and it's a blind turnout when people are coming up over that hill to that particular location. So I think some consultation with Caltrans would be very appropriate because I know they're concerned about public safety issues like that. And then my other concern is I did notice that the botanical report is over 2 years old. And typically botanical reports need to be used within a 2-year time frame. And so that's a little bit of a concern for me. And then I guess I have a big picture question for maybe the attorney, because I don't even know the answer to this. And that is this problem of segmentation. So CEQA requires that whatever the highest agency is that's making the final decision has to look at the project in its entirety. And what I'm a little worried that what's happening here is we're segmenting it insofar as the zoning amendment is going to the Coastal Commission, but then the use permit and the coastal development permit would be heard at a local level, either by the Board of Supervisors or by the Planning Commission. And I'm just not sure, like myself, I don't know that issue because when I did LCP amendments, there was no development proposal that was so far along that it would constitute a project. And it sounds like you pretty much have a submittal that is a project. So I just think that's something to figure out. And I guess those aren't really questions, so they're statements. Sorry, but maybe it is a question if you guys had a way of figuring that out. And then in terms of the environmental resources, the other things that I was a little interested to hear about is, was there any kind of visual analysis that was done from the beach? I know from the highway there's nothing, but I wasn't sure about from the beach, and I recognize that would happen at the CDP use permit phase. But still, that information should be conveyed, I think, to the Coastal Commission as part of the LCP amendment. And then my last question is whether or not it would be appropriate to do some sort of deed restriction that would limit the development envelope when, if this approval goes through, to the botanical, to protect the botanical resources that are there and the wetland resources. And that's just a question. That's it.
All right.
Sorry, that was a lot.
That's fine. I can address any of those if I may through the chair. So as for the first comment, Caltrans, having that access, I mean, the site is garnering access off State Route 1, so project referrals will be sent out to Caltrans, whether, say, an encroachment permit may be in play to increase the throat width or increase safety, or any of those measures would be captured with that use permit stage. As for the botanical reports, those can be made available. For the sake of brevity, we didn't include those on the posting packets as well as printing them out. So that's kind of a little saving some of that paper. And piecemealing, as for those items, I mean, the use permit would not occur, say for that inn or bed and breakfast, without having that accommodation district first. So these items really couldn't really occur, say, concurrently. It's order of operations that has to be in place. And as for moving this on, next steps, depending on the will of the commission today, the Board of Supervisors' ultimate decision will be authorizing our department to prepare a application for that land use amendment. So the application has some additional information that our staff will be filling out, if you will, so that can address some of those questions that you had for those further items. And there was a visual information or analysis study, should I say, that was submitted with that associated use permit. So that will be captured in the further analysis of that project site. It is mapped in a highly scenic area as well as a tree removal area as well. So per our county code, we would be addressing those items And I see the director has some comments.
I was just going to comment. So for one thing, Caltrans did receive a referral of this particular project, and based upon the staff report, they did have some comments that came into staff. And then in terms of the visual aspect, if you're familiar with this area where Van Dam Beach is, it's at quite a lower elevation to this area, and there's multiple parcels in between. I believe with the building envelope that's shown, it's going to be pulled back a bit from the bluff edge too. So, but without an actual, like as part of the use permit, we would actually be analyzing how much, based upon the height of that particular structure that would be proposed, could potentially be visible, and whether or not it needs to be reduced, relocated, made into, a single story if it was proposed to be two-story, et cetera. So that analysis would be associated with the use permit that would come before this commission.
Commissioner Jones, do you have any other questions, or did you have an answer for her question, County Council?
So, Deputy County Council Matthew Godrowski, I'm not sure I have a piecemealing analysis for you on this. I think there is an order of operations issue where that use permit can't go forward without there being this entire analysis and approval by the Coastal Commission for this to happen in theory in any event. So, and right now, the environmental analysis, as you've noted, occurs between the county and the Coastal Commission's review of the project. So, and I don't know that I would elevate the use permit as part of the overall submittal to the Coastal Commission.
Yeah, that was my question.
So,
I'm not sure either.
So that's the best I can opine on at the moment.
Yeah. I mean, it does make sense to me, though, as a matter of fact, that the final act on the LCP amendment would happen at the Board of Supervisors when they accept the amendment by the Coastal Commission. And actually, as a matter of fact, then the use permit and the coastal development permit would need to be heard by them rather than by us. Because that would be where all three are happening at the end of the day with the CEQA. That's just my read on it, for you to contemplate. No, I'm sorry, I'm done.
Okay, for right now, you're done. Commissioner Wiedemann, I have a couple comments and a couple questions for staff report. On Carl Wiedemann's, they did both the septic and the water report study, but didn't they do that for a residence, not for an inn? I believe when I read your report, that it referred to a residence and they would have to do more if it was an inn in the future, because they use the data from a residence as far as the 17-hour pumping test, and I believe inns are different, number one. So I'm going to give you a few ideas that I need to be fleshed out a little more on this, and it'd be easier for me to do it that way, and we could go back. So that was number one. The other question I had is, I never understood how the 4-unit, the house that's the adjacent property to the south that became 4 units. I never understood the permit process of that. And just by the way, I was part of the South Central CIC and the 79 to 85. So, and I have actually a lot of our work, and I know this whole area pretty well. And so I'm going to, throughout this meeting, I'm going to have a lot of comments in my district. And so I wanted some information from planning on how that came about, because it really never had a 1C. Okay, but it got changed from a residence to a, a rental, basically. And then why that's important is because they share a boundary line. And they actually, and my concern would also be is if you did a boundary line adjustment down the road, you have now, because it's owned basically by this, it's the same larger family entity. We have different names, but you're connected, needless to say. So that needs to be kind of addressed for me. And then I'm going to take it another step I would have liked to see, where are the existing easements? Are there any easements on the property that we are looking at, other than the driveway to the south coming through it? But are there easements? And the reason is I know that the Little River Inn, east of the highway, uses some of the lots north of this to pump their effluent sometimes. And you put in a new septic system up there that's mitigated a lot of the issues to the field to the north, I would say, on the west side of the highway. So I'm assuming there's easements on this property. So I haven't seen that map, and this has to do with what was before me. So that would be one map I would like to see, if there are. And then I'm going to say, and I really feel like there should have been the Caltrans report in this package, because that is a very busy area. And then I'm going to jump to another thing, just that the map that you're referring to of 661 existing units and total of 871 was done in 1985. That's 38 years ago. And I think this project really, it's not even a point whether I support it or not. It's that there needs to be more information here from staff on this project. And the information is, you went for a 2-mile area, but we really want to see the build out in that when you refer to the South Central from Russian Gulch all the way down. You're using a map that we did in 1985. And I happen to be part of that. I don't think it would take much to see, one, how many of these designated inns, whether they're a 1C, a 2C, a 5, have been built out, how much more really needs to be built out, and what was added. Because since then, we have permitted more campground spaces to the north. And so that analysis really needed to happen, from my point of view, from the staff report, right? For me to get not just for me, but for even the consultants to have a really good sense of where we are with developing, more visitor serving facilities. And is this the right place, right? And you did an eloquent job of citing the reasoning of where we put our visitor serving facilities. Do we need a few more south of Navarro River? Do we need more north towards the Russian Gulch? So I'm being a little long-winded here, but I think there's a lot more to giving a visitor serving facility new designation when we haven't really had the clear analysis of what's been built out and what's existing, and Caltrans report on that neck of the woods. Okay? And I have more, but I'll wait down the road, and you could respond to some of this.
Sure. So I did take some notes here, so hopefully I address all of your questions and concerns. So starting with the first one that you brought up about the proof of water and why the inn was regarded in the report as, say, a residence. So that was determined by the site evaluator, the Carl Ritterman, on that. The coastal groundwater study does provide some commercial uses, and those have some different parameters, say for thresholds of production of water. So for the analysis of this project, having the water well and the production of that at the high rate that was demonstrated in the proof of water test, it also met those requirements that were contained in the coastal groundwater study as well. So, that wasn't captured here in the staff report. That was omitted on my behalf. It definitely could have been included in there, but that designation of that inn was for that. And then tied into that, how that south unit was permitted. So when we're thinking about that table that you had brought up, that's 38 years old, so older than I am, it definitely has not been updated. We are in the process of updating our local coastal program, so that's forthcoming. There's also noted in the staff report Appendix 10 on the coastal element. So beyond that table 37.2, the Appendix 10 it captures all of the private-owned visitor accommodation services. So if we think about our coastal zoning code, we have principally permitted use for visitor service or vacation home rentals, if you will. So that would be how that came about on that item. As for easements, we're talking about a road access, and that kind of ties in a little bit with Caltrans on what you had mentioned. Those comments were not included in the staff report. If we're talking about a combining district versus, say, a contract rezone, having any requirements, say, for any road improvements or those other items, that would be, say, captured under a little bit more of a different process for a contract rezone, when the items would be addressed with the associated use permit. So I definitely appreciate your attention to detail and wanting to know that information now to make a decision, but that would be addressed, say, with that following use permit, and that's where that condition of approval would be captured for that access.
So if I may add on, so I want to make sure it's clear, it's understood, we do not have provisions for creating contract rezones within the coastal zone. So those provisions only are contained within Title 1 or Division 1 of Title 20 for the inland areas of the county. Those provisions don't exist in the coastal zoning code. So there is no pathway to condition a rezoning or general plan amendment in the coastal zone. It's either supportable or it's not. There's not a contracting portion related to that. And then also on the screen, I just wanted to pop up, this is the response letter that came from Caltrans regarding this application. And what you can see in here, they talk about that that the site's undeveloped and has no established access to the public right-of-way. They talk about the existing double yellow center line across the parcel frontage, but I think we've seen today that the applicant is utilizing a shared driveway approach on the adjacent parcel. But with the comments provided from Caltrans, they really didn't want to comment until a future application, which included additional details regarding ingress and egress, expected guest occupancy, hours of operation, etc. So that was what they concluded with for this particular application, but as Planner Schweitzer said, they would be provided, again, a referral as part of the use permit and the opportunity to provide more specific comments based upon the proposal included at that time.
And to kind of sum up my addressing of your comments, that data that we have is what we currently have in the record, the local coastal program. So yes, it is outdated. So referring to our current standards, that's what our office has to abide by on permitting this development. So that additional map that was created with the 2-mile radius, that was determined through mapping efforts of those existing sites and any that were potentially built out. So our office has yet to receive any, say, conditional use permits for these items. I mean, this is the first project for a combining district within the coastal zone. So this is really one of the first items that the Planning Commission and, say, further down the road that the Board of Supervisors would be seeing on this item. So yes, the information is outdated, but that's what we have to work with in the record.
So what I would say to the commission is if it sounds like the commission, based upon some of your questions and comments, may desire additional information regarding this before making a decision. And what we would want to have from the commission is really clear what that additional information is, so we could then work with the applicant. But I also think it might be a great time to hear from
Yes.
the applicants and
I
the
agree.
Yeah,
I agree. So let's move to invite the applicant's presentation, and please come up to the mic, and or if not the applicant, you could do the applicant or the owner, either one first, however you'd like to do it. And just for you to know, that mic, you have to stand kind of close.
Okay, how's that?
that's
Sounds
good.
okay so far.
And Megan, if I can just briefly, I have the documents that Amy sent to us for the applicant's presentation, so just let me know whenever you'd like those shared on the screen. Yeah.
Great, thank you. We've kind
And
of
please
have
state
those.
your name.
Absolutely. Good morning, everyone. My name is Megan Durbin. I'm Senior Planner for Wind Coastal Planning and Biology, agent for the applicant. As you can see, the applicant and owner is also here, as well as Amy. So anything that I can't address or speak to, there's more of us here that should be able to. Thank you for your time this morning. Thank you, Stephen, for your hard work on this project and your staff report. I just wanted to, I was prepared to just provide a little bit of context and color for the project as a whole, and then make a couple points about the staff report. As probably some of you know, the applicant has been a experienced provider of local hospitality, lodging, and dining services for many years, and is also informed by generations of her family before her running the same facility. They are active members of the community in general as a whole, as well as specifically within the community of lodging operators, local lodging operators. Based on this experience and the excellent reputation of the Little River Inn, they're acutely aware and experienced in regard to what it takes to sustain a lodging business on the Mendocino coast and maintain be an employer on the Mendocino coast. They know what the customer, the visitor, wants, and what we are presenting, this first step with the general plan amendment and rezone request, is, in light of what the demand is in this market. Through our applications, both for the general plan amendment and the rezone and the CDP, the use permit, we have demonstrated, as Stephen went into detail about, that the property does have sufficient water, septic, and the other necessary findings for this report. As you are well aware, of course, with Chair Wiedemann, with being a member of the CAC, there is specific language in the coastal element that discourages having additional visitor serving facilities in this section, the South Coast Central, so many more words. However, as you mentioned, that was written, 38 years ago. And now we have the data observation and the market trends showing that there is more demand for visitor accommodating services in these areas that are closer to services and amenities, as opposed to being further spread out down the coast or in the South Coast. There is specific language in that section of the coastal element that speaks to spreading it out and trying to drive more demand south of Navarro River. However, they, in writing the coastal element, they knew that those ideas were conceptual. A part of the coastal element, which is also included in the staff report, notes, quote, "It remains to be seen how much of the demand can be shifted to the South Coast. More quality restaurants, more inns, and more shoreline access are proposed to establish the South Coast as a visitor destination area." And there has been a lot of more public access established, but not a lot more restaurants and inns and or other amenities farther down the South Coast. So that is why we believe that the establishment of a 5-unit inn here, expanding here, first step, of course, being the general plan amendment that we were talking about today, does not negate or prevent more businesses from being established on the South Coast. We very much appreciate the staff support for our request, and I would like to take this opportunity to refine some of the information about the occupancy rates and the average daily rates. Rather than looking at the total average, as was noted in Stephen's presentation, we'd like to bring attention to the statistics for the Van Dam House, and that is the property that's just south of the project site, the proposed project site. With 5 units there, that has the highest occupancy rate of either the main Little River Inn property or the Mallory House, another Little River Inn property. And that is with those units actually have the highest average daily rates out of any of the 3 categories. That is an indication that that is what people want. They want more of that vacation home rental experience, even at a higher rate, where there are rooms at the main Little River Inn property that rent for less than half of that and still don't have as high as an occupancy rate. Excuse me. Also in the section about surrounding visitor services, Stephen spoke to the counterintuitive aspect that operators are not always striving for 100% occupancy. However, in this case, it's not a matter of, as quoted from the staff report, compromise of the optimal price to achieve 100% or even focusing on that percentage number. In this experience, the way to successful operation is balancing the staffing capacity with the guest needs. If one aims for 100% occupancy but doesn't have the staff to meet the needs, that's detrimental to future business. Available staff is limited, as we know, countywide situation. And the room rates and occupancy rates are closely managed to ensure that there will be enough cash flow to run efficiency, as well as enough staff on site at any given time to meet guest needs. Maintaining their status as a stable, local, year-round employer is of the utmost concern to the applicant, as well as, I believe, a concern of us countywide and this commission. Additionally, Stephen notes that should prices be reduced, occupancy rates would be expected to climb closer to 100%, allowing the capture of a larger consumer market. And he also notes, contingent on pricing, additional units in the South Central CAC region could be sustained by the provided market conditions. We believe that additional units in this region can be sustained without a change in pricing, as previously noted in relation to the Van Dam House rates and occupancy rates. The proposed project, contingent on this request for the general plan amendment, meets the needs of existing demand without any price adjustment to the existing units. And lastly, I think important point overall for this project and for it's specific to this topic, the proposed, what will be analyzed with the use permit, when the use permit is heard, it meets the demands for customers for wanting a vacation home rental experience without taking away from existing housing stock or potential future housing stock. If this general plan amendment was not approved, the most worthwhile use and the principally permitted use would be to build a single-family residence, which then the most likely use would be renting out as a vacation home because of its location around various, a commercial area with Little River Market and the post office, the state parks, the cemetery, as well as the other lodging. This is not a place that would be desirable for someone to live as a full-time residence. And then I believe that all of the questions from the commissioners were addressed well by Stephen as well as Julia. As far as the dated nature of the analysis of units, in some of our submittals in relation to this project, we did do some, when coastal planning, we did do an analysis of the existing visitor accommodating services as well as where there was the combining district. And there hasn't been a lot ultimately that has changed. I mean, certainly there have been some changes, but there hasn't been a huge change in that. And we do have further information on that could be made available that we go into in detail. One of the notes was that we found that in this Mendocino through Albion area, the Russian Gulch to Navarro River, of all of the VAS designated parcels, 79% of them had visitor accommodating services on them, 18% remain vacant, and 4% have been developed with residentially. I think that's everything. I probably forgot something, but I'll stop there for now.
Excuse me, my mute was still on. Do you want the next speaker first from the applicant's side, and then we'll wait to hear all of you, and then we'll ask questions from the commission? Would you prefer that? I didn't hear it. Okay, all right. So so no other, Amy, you're not going to give it? Okay, thanks. So with that, we bring it back to the commission for questions. So Commissioner Parnell, do you have any questions?
Just a quick question for staff. There's been a lot of discussion about that 38-year-old table, which is essentially like a simple market analysis. Is a market analysis, are there any findings that must be made about that as a requirement for this amendment?
So what's captured, Project Planner Steven Schweitzer here, what's captured in that policy is effectively having a land use map amendment for any proposed new uses. The Coastal Zoning Code chapter does provide a little bit further requirements for that and what that analysis looks like, and that was captured in the staff report. So that in short states water availability and to address your question, a analysis of the surrounding visitor accommodation services. So to the extent of what that looks like, that's not spelled out within our coastal zoning code, as well as in the local coastal program. So short answer, no.
And if I may just add, that table, I think we're referring to table 3.7-2. It is for illustrative purposes only, and it also only accounted for the rooms that were existing at the time that that table was prepared and the LCP adopted. So it hasn't even accounted for rooms that have been added that are permissible to add through a coastal development permit to existing sites. It did include the potential additional units on the asterisks, 1C or 2C or 3C type of properties that had not been developed yet at that point. And when those sites were designated as part of the local coastal program, the intention was designating sites that they felt were sufficient at that time to meet the demands of visitor serving needs and to provide a spread of visitor serving uses throughout the coastal zone. And we have seen that some of those sites have never been developed that have the 2C or 1C designation on them. But this table, it also does not include any visitor serving facilities that are in the rural village, fishing village, or commercial zoning districts, does not include vacation home rentals. So this table is really, it is an illustration, but I don't know that it provides as much helpful information about the current circumstances out there as the commission may hope. But I will say, as part of our LCP update, we will be updating this information.
Thank you.
Commissioner Babini, any questions for the applicant?
No, thank you for your presentation as well today.
Commissioner Jones?
No, I don't know what I want to ask yet. I'm not ready to order.
Well, I won't buy you much time because I don't have any questions.
Oh, you suck.
Sorry. I know.
I guess I had a couple of questions. It's sort of like the elephant in the living room. Do you have slides that show your development proposal so we could at least see it, one? And two, do you anticipate continuing to have livestock on this property, or would that use cease once you establish if you establish an inn?
Hi, Callie Dim, owner-operator, Little River Inn. We do hope to have the goats back someday, so we're keeping the little barn. and trying to figure out how we could build like a little runway on the property we're talking about so that they could still get to the grazing pasture south side. We like the goats.
No, go ahead. Okay, Callie, stay up here for a second if you may. Thank you for coming. So are there any easements on the property that you're asking, deeded easements on that property? I have not seen a map, of any easements for the existing property you're asking to get to be.
I don't know that there is an official easement.
rezoned.
The water development is on my side that furnishes Van Dam with water.
And that serves the building to the south,
Correct,
right?
yes.
So they have I don't know if they have an easement, but
Prescriptive rights perhaps would be a
Yeah,
better word.
okay,
Yeah.
right.
I promise not to cut my mother off.
So do you have an easement to send your extra effluents from that property to the septic field to the north of you, or cross under the highway to the new field that Watkins Sand and Gravel put in?
Not familiar with, just north is just the little creek that goes down between us and the store.
Couldn't do it. Right.
So I'm not
You
sure how I
probably
would
couldn't
get.
cross that. All right.
No.
I was just curious if there was.
Please.
Yeah.
Megan Durbin again, Planner,
Yeah,
One Coastal
thank you,
Planning and
Megan.
Biology. Of course, Van Dam House has its own, the property just to the south of where the proposed
Right.
project is. They have their own septic. This would have its own septic, and I believe the inn has a leach field across the highway that's already established.
Yes.
So there wouldn't
Right.
be, the proposed project will have its own septic system on this parcel. There won't be a
Okay.
need for any septic
right.
easements.
And while you're up here. Yeah. I don't think I ever got it answered how the, you call it the house, the property to the south, what do you call that?
Van Dam House, excuse me.
The Van Dam House. How did that become 4 units without an asterisk? I'm just curious.
I can take that.
Huh?
I can take that. So it's actually, when they provided the asterisk 1 to the Little River Inn, it included reference to this particular parcel as well. So this parcel doesn't have the asterisk sitting on it on the land use plan maps, but it's part of that overall development.
The planned development, so it was part of the planned development?
It was part of the Little River Inn, so it was
No.
specified in there that doesn't have the asterisks over the top of this particular property, but in the actual tables that we have, Appendix 10, that references this assessor parcel number as part of that overall development
That
of
it
the
could
Little
have
River Inn.
That development, but as
It's not mapped, but it's on a table.
I understand, but as a planned development, because the Little River Inn is a PD, zoned, a PD. That, I'm just questioning.
I mean, I would have to go back through more history there, but, and I believe that much of the Little River Inn development had been permitted by the California Coastal Commission as well, so it's history beyond what we just have in our office.
I just was curious because you usually have, it's an RR5 and it's zoning.
Well, I will say what's common that I've seen in the coastal code is you may have where it says an asterisk designation, and on the land use plan map, you see that applied over one particular property. But then there's notations that say it may be developed across and reference multiple assessor parcel numbers, saying this can be created as
Okay.
multiple
Great.
assessor
I
parcel
just didn't
numbers.
know that was the connection there. It was just a question. On the one question I want to get to is the blowhole, right? So in this was the general plan coastal element. It was the 1983 version before it was adopted. The South Central CAC, we were really wanting to make sure that that fabulous Little River Blowhole Vista Point would be protected and would eventually have some kind of a dedication, an easement that, for perpetuity. And so, in the policy 4.7-13, an offer to dedicate an easement to the public for access shall be obtained for those areas shown on the land use map consistent with policy 3.6-5. And in the staff report, it talked a little bit about this, and but I believe the dots getting there, the showing a trail, the circular dots. I want to talk a little. I want to flesh that out a little bit. What is the? Is there a way that we could get, whether it's the Mendocino Land Trust or something, to help make the easement to the blowhole through your property, so to speak?
Good news, it was already done.
Well, it was
Back
to the
in
south. Well, wasn't it done to the south of the cemetery?
Yeah.
That is it.
Through the cemetery. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Maybe we could put
The
up
easement is actually on the Van Dam property, and Mendocino Land Trust did take on that easement, opened it up. The trail goes just north of the cemetery and wraps around, and it's gorgeous. They have interpretive signage and stuff. It's really quite well done.
Great, so it's already a dedicated easement?
Yes.
Great.
It is.
And that's fabulous. And are you putting a trail in from your proposed parcel down to that too?
Not to the blowhole, no. You would have to go through a lot of poison oak and goat pasture. So no, but my understanding is that we will have to provide an easement at our cost. So not the land trust or anybody else, at our cost. To the bluff.
Well, great, wonderful.
And if I may, through the chair, project planner Steven Schweitzer here. So there is an offer to dedicate, as the applicant had demonstrated, for the
Can you repeat
blowhole.
that?
There is an offer to dedicate for the blowhole on record that was accepted. As for policies specific towards, say, bluff top parcels where there's going to be a visitor accommodation services applied to it, those require that a offer to a vertical access connecting, say, from the front of the property to the coast, and that's detailed in the staff report, would be required as a condition of approval for the project. So I think the applicant touched on that. So that is spelled out in our coastal zoning code. So in addition to what was already provided and addressed with that accepted offer to dedicate to the blowhole, the applicant would need to have an irrevocable offer to dedicate put up. And those last for 21 years. And whether, say, an agency takes that on, you know, that's up for debate.
Okay. I guess I could ask, would you be willing to do that too?
Willing to do what exactly? I got a little lost there.
I will say it's a mandatory policy, so it's actually
Yes.
not optional, to
Okay,
be
great.
quite blunt.
Right, the easement to the bluff is
Yeah.
mandated, right?
Yes.
So yes, very willing.
Yes, since it's mandated. Thanks.
And that, of course, will be addressed with the use permit.
So let me just see if I have.
Oh, if I could speak to one other question that you had. One of the items that we did provide, that Amy provided, was some visuals about the proposed project that's already been submitted. The application for that has already been. So
Thank
you.
you.
Want to share some of those?
I thought you were being cagey when you weren't going to show those.
No.
Let's just see. I'm just looking for my other question here. So.
No problem.
Yeah. That's it for the applicant. Thank you.
But weren't we going to see the pictures? I mean, that was like a very anticlimactic. Sorry.
There's a request for a break, a short break. So could we have a 10-minute break at 11:20, returning at 11:30? Thank you.
licencia a conducir, que era un objetivo que teníamos en cuanto a la familia, para poder estar tranquilos, así que encuentro que ha sido fundamental el apoyo.
El objetivo del programa es que las familias estén bien, y que las familias estén bien significa niños felices, niños sanos, y eso en un futuro es adultos sanos y un mundo mejor. Entonces, está bueno.
She has made me feel like I'm important and I can go at my own pace, and that's all you need sometimes when you're feeling like you got nobody.
It was helpful to have somebody there kind of holding my hand and guiding me and letting me know this is kind of the normal. It felt like I was becoming a new mom, so it was very interesting and helpful, very, very helpful.
You know, there was that self-conscious part of me, like, will I be accepted even though I'm not perfect?
What I like the most is that she really listens.
The support that she gives me is special because she does it with love, and it's just natural, you know? That's all I could say. It just feels like somebody that I've known since I was little.
You know, I said to Jeanette, Jeanette, you're supposed to be with me for 5 years. Jeanette said, yeah, I know, I'm going to be with you guys for 5 years. That's when I said, well, I guess I can trust her. She's going to be with us for 5 years.
Yo creo que quizás pasó como a la segunda visita o algo así, como que ya nos presentamos formalmente. Y luego ya creo que en la segunda visita estaba como todo más tranquilo, como muy... como que el ambiente era muy familiar, entonces yo me sentí muy cómoda.
Felt like she cared for Sparrow too, and Sparrow really enjoyed it. Yeah, she knew when Gabby came we were going to be making something or learning something, and she'd instantly start digging through Gabby's bags to find out what activity we were going to do.
Not only did we get the assistance with this program, but we also made a really good friend. I'm happy to call Gabby our friend.
I think the relationship that we've built has been just, she's a part of the family.
When I first realized that I was gonna be a parent, I was super scared. After 2 or 3 weeks of meeting in the home visiting program, I was totally comfortable with the fact that I was gonna have a baby. Yes, I was still scared, but at the same time, I felt like I had some sense of strength behind me.
If I didn't have those resources that Jeanette provided me, I think it would be harder now.
I got into the program and I realized, like, oh, this is nice. And now look at me, I work at a family resource center with parents and families, all this stuff.
I'm so grateful that I got the opportunity to meet my home visitor, because without her, I think that I would be 10 steps behind from where I'm at right now.
Pero pues aquí pues ya los enseñan un poquito más cosas que uno no sabía. Como cómo cuidarla, cómo desarrollarla, cómo educarla, y pues es algo bien porque pues cosas que yo no sabía, pues ya usted nos las dijo y todo como consejos, y pues muchas cosas que se aprendieron.
I don't know what's normal for a 22-month-old baby or an 18-month-old baby, you know. When we get together, we usually discuss and get some progress made with the baby. It makes me feel comfortable, and I associate my parenting with her, my home visitor, telling me, yeah, this is going great.
So it's nice to know where they're at, what stage they're at for every parent, and also to give, again, your children that head start in education.
If I had any questions with her, just call her up on the phone. You know, it was very relatable, very personal. And, you know, with her getting to know my kids, you know, she got to kind of help guide me along the way. I mean, there were so many cool things that I've learned.
I went from a very like rough type of life. I was homeless, and she was able to help me get into school, and I actually have enough credits to graduate with the business degree right now.
I think I really want to mention just that I'm grateful that I took advantage, because it's something that has put me in touch with my child, or closer to my child and her development.
I want other people and parents to know that the home visiting is not something that you should be afraid of. It's actually something that is needed.
You know, because she's not just here for her, she's here to help with all of it. She helped me create a safe space where I feel comfortable enough to ask for help.
Don't be afraid to take that step. Like, don't be afraid to get help. It's always okay to have extra support.
I would say, give it a try. You got nothing to lose. It's free. There's some perks, you know. They've got some great resources.
Personally, I think everybody could benefit from the home visiting programs.
We're back in session at 11:30, and now we're going to move to public comment. And since we've asked the applicant, the commissioners have asked questions from the applicant and got the applicant's presentation, we're moving to public comment. The commission will now hear public comment on this item. The commission will start with public comments in the room and then hear the telecommenters that are connected virtual via Zoom. Are there any virtual via Zoom?
I don't have any members of the public with their hand
Okay.
raised.
And is anybody in the room from the public wishing to speak as a public participant? Seeing none, okay, we will close the public comment. Staff, do you have any final remarks?
I'm available for any further questions.
Okay. And does the applicant have any final remarks? Well, very good.
Omitted mentioning it when I was last up here. Speaking to the current data about the market and available visitor serving accommodations. In our work on this project, we did do deep analysis to the best extent we could, just through research, online information, and our knowledge of the area and living in the area, about how much visitor accommodating services have been developed since the initial writing of the coastal element. And that was when I was referencing in the Mendocino through Albion areas, in those LCP maps, 17, 18, and 19, excluding the, villages and things like that were mentioned. 79% of visitor accommodating service designated parcels that either have the asterisk or the asterisk C with the number have been developed with visitor accommodating services. 4% have been developed residentially, and 18% remain vacant. To the best of our ability, and this also does not capture vacation home rentals. Down on the South Coast, 49% of the visitor accommodating services properties have been developed. Of the remaining 51 that were not developed with visitor accommodating services, 41%, have been developed residentially, and the same similar numbers for the areas between the entire area of coastal zone. So I just think it's important to note that that supports the idea that the observation of data and market trends and the evolution of our visitor industry in our county has really indicated that people want to be closer to services. Even with the example of the Little River Inn property, the Mallory House, which is very nearby, it's probably maybe a mile away from these, that has a lower occupancy rate, even with very nice rooms, because of being farther removed. Folks like to be either, it seems to be that folks like to be near Mendocino, Fort Bragg, or our other small town centers. So we did do a pretty deep analysis of that in considering this and working on, where this fits, and to the best of our ability, of course, with limited data. Visit Mendocino, the association, the lodging association here, or, after the lodging association, they are working on having current data about this and working with the county tax collector and assessor's office to have access to that data. So that is something that is in the works, but unfortunately, of course, is not available right now. So we just did the analysis to the best we could. So, yeah. That's all, I think. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
And if I may, Chair Wiedemann, I think just before you go back into your deliberations, I'll frame it that I think what I've heard from the Commission today is a desire for some additional information and a couple questions that I don't think that we're able to answer today regarding about the use permit and whether or not that would need to move with this LCP amendment. So I think, at least from staff perspective, if the Commission desires definitive responses to those questions that have been posed, we would need a continuance to be able to fully answer those. And if the Commission does move towards a continuance, we would ask for some very clear direction on what additional information the Commission may seek to have as part of this item returning before you.
Thank you. And I'll take note of that, and we'll address that. Does staff have any, is that your final remarks from staff?
Yes.
Okay. And we had the final remarks from the applicant, and now I will ask the Commissioner, and I'll call each one for any additional comments or questions for staff or the applicants. Commissioner Jones?
Yeah, thank you. So I think some of the concern up here on the bench is the issue that I brought up at the beginning of the meeting, that this issue of segmentation and the fact that there is an application for an inn out there. There's a lot of information in there that we are not privy to. And just from a CEQA perspective, this project shouldn't be segmented. So let me describe how a good way of moving forward might be, and if the Commission's wants to do this, or if you want to approve it as is. It's all of our prerogatives. I think what would be the right way to move forward is for the commission to receive and provide a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors about the zoning amendment, the use permit, and the coastal development permit all at the same time. And then those would all go to the Board of Supervisors, which would then submit the LCP amendment to the Coastal Commission, and they would then make the final decision on all of those things. All three of them need to be packaged together. So that would be my recommendation. Beyond that, if that isn't the feeling of the commission as a whole, I am a little bit just concerned about the special status plant species and the continued grazing of goats on the property. I love goats. I've got donkeys. In fact, when the guy who used to own GeoAg, he boarded his horse Rooster here. At one point, he was going to adopt one of my donkeys, and we were going to put him out there, and I went out, and I was like, ooh, this is too wet for a donkey. This is very wet. So I do feel a little bit like some sort of requirement for a deed restriction on this property to limit grazing and use of the areas where the rare plants have been designated, and it could be as simple as just shifting where the fence is, would be appropriate in the interim. Because the LCP amendment itself could easily take a year, knowing how the Coastal Commission goes. So that's just my thought on the matter.
Commissioner Paulin?
Thank you, Chair Weidman. I guess just a question, say maybe Deputy County Counsel and to Director Krog, based on Commissioner Jones's questions. I see the wisdom of having everything move ahead and as a single package, but I guess this question of like order of operations, like would that be appropriate, or do we need to have this process finalized before the use permit process can move forward? Or are there any restrictions or limitations that we should be aware of in that?
Thank you, Director Krog here. I would want to consult with the Coastal Commission. I will say it is not something that we have processed previously to have an LCP amendment move with a use permit. Oftentimes it's independent. It may just be an LCP amendment and no future development application proposed at that time. So we would want to consult with the commission about if that's feasible, what that order of operations may look like. Because typically you would not be able to make use of any use permit until a certification of the amendment had occurred, and then the board accepting any changes that may have been made to an amendment as part of their certification process. So it's a bit of a, we'll have to explore with the commission if that is a feasible pathway or what they may recommend for how we move this forward.
So I just want to provide a little clarification of what I'm recommending. I'm not recommending that the use permit or the coastal development permit would go to the Coastal Commission, because you're right, that would be inappropriate. So when I processed the very large LCP amendment for the grocery store, 180 units of housing, and a gas station and a restaurant at the juncture of Highway 20 and Highway 1, that required an LCP amendment, an EIR, use permit, design review, etc. So we process that as one huge application. Some of it stops at the level of in the city of Fort Bragg at the city council. So everything but the LCP amendment stops at the city council. But as governmental agencies, you have to look at the whole project per CEQA. And the whole project includes the whole project, which includes the zoning changes and the development and et cetera. So, you know, would this project ever get challenged in a court because it didn't comply with CEQA? No, it would not. But and that's why, like, it's open to the commission to decide whether you want to use this standard at this time or not. But just from my understanding, with my attorneys in the past, sorry to bring up the past, but like that's where my knowledge comes from. You need to process them together. So that's all I'm saying.
Commissioner Parnell, any comments on?
Yeah, I've got a couple. I am confident in the information that's been provided to the commission today, and am prepared to vote in favor of this amendment today. I recognize that there's like a whole other layer and level of detail that will be for the use permit. I believe that the applicant are aware that whatever comments come from Fish and Wildlife and Caltrans, it would be neat for us to have that information today, but that's just not where we're at in the process. And I'm already working with them. Those will be project, and I'm totally fine waiting for those. As far as procedurally, how this moves forward to the Coastal Commission, it's beyond my area of expertise. And what I would be looking for is for staff and county council to do a review and have some discussion on what they think is the best way forward in light of discussion today. And here's a question. Would we be able to vote on this today and then hear back at a later date on how it moves forward?
Deputy County Counsel Matthew Kudrowski, I think I would recommend against that. I think I'd recommend to continue it, to sort things out, provide more information, and come back with a pathway forward.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Babini.
I think I echo Commissioner Purnell in that, I believe that the information for what this application specifically is asking for, I would be happy to vote today. I know from my experience in Sonoma County with a project that required a changing to the property's allowabilities, and with a use permit associated with that for residents, the Coastal Commission actually denied our use permit because we tried to put it together, because they said you don't have approval yet for this use that you're asking for on the property. I don't know if that's every Coastal Commissioner or just the one that we happened to be assigned that was working on our project, but I would be interested to see what the current Coastal Commission folks that are working in this area would recommend for process with having multiple kind of steps to a project moving forward with them.
Okay, and Commissioner Wiedemann, I have a couple things that I would like. I actually think we should ask this to be continued, and because I think it would be good if we had more information with the reports and the maps that were stated, the bio reports and the maps. I think the Caltrans letter really doesn't have any kind of analysis to it. And so at this point, and I don't think this project requires at some point Caltrans needs to update from Navarro River up to, let's say, Fort Bragg, but the leg is in the South Central. They need to update that at some point. But I'm not saying this particular application would request that. But I do think that we also should hear from the Coastal Commission on this. If they didn't comment, I'm surprised. They haven't commented, and I'm kind of concerned about that. And I really would like a little more analysis on the build-out of existing visitor serving facilities in the South Central leg and regarding what's happening. And I don't think that would be that complicated to do, because we also, I think what was brought up, we have this, we have, rural village, we have the fishing village. There is a lot more build out on the coast. And we just need to, as a planning commissioner, I'm doing due diligence. And I drive those roads every day, and I have to say, we just need to be prudent on where we want that build out. So if, I think I would recommend that we carry this over until we get more information. I think that will help you down the road, whatever information comes in as you go to the Board of Soups and farther up. That's what I'm going to request. And how do you want to do?
To ask for a motion.
Yes, okay.
And I will just say, if that motion includes the continuance, staff will ask for clarification.
Okay. So may I have a motion from the commission?
Well, I'll go ahead and move to continue this until we get clarity about how to do the concurrent processing of the CDP use permit and CEQA for those, as well as the LCP amendment going up to the Coastal Commission.
Do I have a second? I'll second that. But so, can we have a roll call vote?
Can we have discussion or
Sure.
roll call vote?
Sure.
Okay. I am curious if the continuance is partially based on Chair Wiedemann's desire to extract comments from the Coastal Commission and Caltrans that they had a chance to provide but have not provided.
Well, I would say for me, that's not the case at all. For me, the case is that the order of operation should be that we look at the entire package together as a commission. So, and because, so I'll just try, I feel like I've explained this a few times, but based on other people's comments, I don't feel like it's really been understood. So within a jurisdiction, whichever agency makes the decision at the, if there's any part of a permit that goes to the Board of Supervisors, for example, then all of the other aspects that go with that must go to the Board of Supervisors. So if it were to come back to us, and it sounds like the application is already complete, it could actually save the applicant a lot of time. Because what would happen is it would come to us and we would make a recommendation, and that recommendation would include any special conditions that we thought were appropriate for an inn at this location, and it would include a recommendation on the coastal development permit, the use permit, and the zoning amendment. That would then go to the Board of Supervisors. The Board of Supervisors would make a decision on submitting the zoning amendment and on approving the coastal development and use permit subject to approval of the zoning amendment by the Coastal Commission. Then only the zoning amendment would go to the Coastal Commission where they would decide that. And then once they decided that and the Board of Supervisors selected that, then all the permits would be finalized at that point. So we would never have a decision about choosing whether or not to approve this. Our decision would only ever be making a recommendation to the board. And for me, the challenge is that I haven't seen the background information for this parcel. I only have things alluded to about an application that I have not seen. And that's not, it's not good planning practice. I mean, I don't know how else to say it than that, because you're making a decision not knowing what the final configuration of the project would be. And if there was no project, then we would just make a decision on that. But there is a project, we just don't have it in front of us. And so just purely from a CEQA perspective, that's actually not allowed. So that's like the problem that I see with it. Like that's, and that's why I made the caveat that there's probably no one that would challenge it in court and cause it not to occur. So maybe it doesn't matter, but like, you know, it kind of makes me like not happy. So that's why I'm voting to continue it.
That's a
So,
different
like,
rationale for continuance
my
than what
continuance
Chair Wiedemann brought
would
up.
be to actually come back with the whole package. That would be my continuance.
I just want to comment. I think that's what I'm bringing up is the filler that we haven't gotten for what she was doing, the next layer. That, you know, we haven't gotten some of these reports. We haven't even seen them, right? So that's what I'm saying is that it's kind of incomplete for my.
But it's not incomplete this is just a
Recommendation?
zoning map amendment
Actually, I would
recommendation
disagree
to
with
the
that.
board.
I disagree with
I would
that.
disagree with that because it's
Yes.
our obligation to have the environmental
Right.
information when we make a recommendation. We don't have CEQA authority, that is true, only the Coastal Commission does, but that environmental information should be going to the staff, to the planning, to the, I'm sorry, the coast, my brain. I'm still getting over something really bad that's lasted for 4 weeks, so forgive me if I'm not completely coherent. Don't worry, I'm sure I'm not contagious. Like, Bebbini's looking at me like, oh.
No, I just have a
X-nay.
question when you guys are done, don't
X-nay
worry.
on that. Yeah, I totally lost my train of thought, sorry.
It's okay. Commissioner Bavini.
I just had a quick question for staff in that regards. Can the applicant even submit a use permit that staff will look at and process without this being approved first?
Yes, it's called concurrent processing.
Deputy County Counsel Matthew Godrowski, that's something that is not part of this packet right now. And given the statements made that are kind of at odds between past experiences, between two different commissioners, that's something that I think we're looking in part for a continuance to figure out and bring back later on. And as part of that continuance, if desired as part of a motion, staff could also bring back additional information at a minimum to answer questions that were part of this, or potentially that would be involved in bringing together a full packet of all the entire, potential items that might be coming before the commission. So that's where I think the source, and Mr. Krog, correct me if I'm wrong, that I think is the reason that we're looking for a continuance, is to hash some of those things out.
Yes, and I'll just add to that as well, to some of the comments I heard from Chair Wiedemann as well. Even with a continuance, I cannot guarantee that any referral agencies that were cited, Caltrans or the Commission, would actually provide comments. I can't require that they do. If they choose not to, that is their prerogative. And so what I understood from the motion that was made by Commissioner Jones was really a desire to sort out this question of whether or not this needs to move as one complete item, and come back and respond to that exact question.
That's fine. Or alternatively, if you find out that it should move on as a complete item, I don't feel like you need to come back to us. You could just bring it back as a complete item.
Yep.
Right.
Understood.
Right.
Yeah, understood.
Okay, I just want to acknowledge that we have a motion and a second and some discussion. I feel complete.
So, can we have roll call vote?
Well,
Did you get your
As
direction? Do you wanna say it
I'll
again?
clarify. What I
Yes,
understand is
yes.
that the continuance is for staff to essentially consult with the Coastal Commission to confirm our approach with this particular application, and also work with County Counsel's office regarding the segmentation of the two aspects that we've talked about, the LCP amendment, which is what is in front of you today, and the use permit that has been filed for future in development contingent upon this approval.
And I would like, if also is there any chance we can kind of do a better job at the 1985? Can we look at what's been developed?
If that's made part of the motion by the motion maker.
I would like to see that.
And I would just like to clarify that not just the use permit should come back to us with a recommendation, so should the coastal development permit, because they all need to go to the Board of Supervisors. Yeah.
Are we still in discussion?
Yes.
Thanks.
There
So,
hasn't been.
okay, great. So I hear the wisdom. I guess I also just don't want to be presumptuous. The applicant obviously has engaged, Wind Coastal Planning, and they have their thinking in their process, and I don't want to be presumptuous that we're going to save them time and money and do this better than how they're proceeding. And so I know we're not hearing from the applicant time right now, but I see that the applicant is wishing to speak, and I'd be curious to hear their perspective on this segmentation question. I agree that we need to make sure that, any conditions that are placed on the eventual use permit, consider all these environmentally sensitive areas, but they have chosen to proceed the way that they've chosen at this point, and I'm curious to hear their rationale and their thoughts about us requiring this to come as a complete package as opposed to coming as the way that they've originally anticipated. So I guess I would ask the chair if you'd be so kind as to recognize the applicant again and feedback.
You know, I would, but the problem, I think, is we're in another level here. We can offer it. I mean, I'm not sure what we could do that. I'm not quite sure.
Well, then, I guess if we don't do that, I'm not going to vote for this one, and I would urge other
No,
commissioners to not, and then we could hear from the applicant and maybe make another motion that's in line with meeting the concerns and the questions that are here, but.
Let's not belabor our
right.
timeline. So the applicant, let's hear what the applicant has to say, that we're asking for sending it back to staff to flesh out the questions and the thoughts we presented.
Absolutely. Megan Durbin, Planner, Wind Coastal Planning and Biology, agent for the applicant. Just a couple points of fact. The Coastal Commission did comment on the general plan amendment and rezone application back when it was originally referred after this was applied for in 2021. They did, and those comment, that is referenced in the staff report in the table that indicates who commented or didn't comment. Right. It is noted that Coastal Commission commented. We sent them back a lengthy submittal and narrative addressing all of the points that the Coastal Commission brought up at that time. That submittal happened back in November of 2022. So there was comment from the Coastal Commission. I believe Caltrans made the same comment with the referral for the general plan amendment as they did with the referral for the coastal development permit application that was submitted more recently. So just to point out that there have been some comments from both entities. They have engaged.
But the problem was we haven't seen them.
Right. Right, absolutely understand that. Just wanted to make sure y'all knew they were there.
That is the problem. So,
so I guess my question to the applicant is, you know, you've heard a proposal from the Planning Commission for an alternate path forward, and I'm curious your response or objections or concurrence that you might have with this proposal.
Thank you. That was the next thing I was going to speak to, the segmentation, and then that was all I had. We would defer to County Council and staff, the director's determination about what is most appropriate. We have moved forth with this project under the same, you know, indication that first we needed to have the permission to even ask for something like this, and then contingent on that, it could be approved. So that is how we have been moved forward and why we applied it in the way that we did.
All right, thank you, Megan.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So I have one more comment, sorry.
Commissioner Jones?
Yeah, so I just took the liberty of looking up at SequaNet under the Sequa portal, what is a definition of piecemealing or segmenting, and I thought it would be helpful, since people don't believe my words, to hear them from the state agency. Piecemealing or segmenting means dividing a project into two or more pieces and evaluating each piece in a separate environmental document. In this case, we would have a CEQA document at the local level, and the Coastal Commission would have their CEQA equivalent. This is explicitly forbidden by CEQA because dividing a project into a number of pieces would allow a lead agency to minimize the apparent environmental impacts of a project by evaluating individual pieces separately, which is exactly what we would be doing here. And then it goes on to say, for a planned approval such as a general plan amendment, the project description must include a reasonably anticipated physical development that would occur in view of the approval. What we're looking for right now is an LCP amendment, which is effectively a general plan amendment. And it goes on to say, for a phased development project, even if details about future plans are not known, future phases must be included in the project description if they are reasonably foreseeable consequence of the initial phase and will significantly change the initial project or its impact. So you have a complicated situation here. I understand why, like I even came at the beginning of this meeting, not quite sure what I thought. But after reading all this and thinking about it, really need to do it as one project. And just to clarify what that means for you in terms of a time change. So what that means is this would come back to us. We'd look at everything at once, submit a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors. So that would be like what, maybe a 3-month period after you have your coastal development permit and use permit process completed. And then it would go to the Coastal Commission. So we're not really talking about adding a lot of time. And at the end of that process, you just have your permits. You wouldn't have to come back to us to get a coastal development permit and a use permit. So it doesn't take more time. It would actually be more efficient.
So we have a motion, and with that, Julia, are you clear now?
The motion, as I understand it, made by Commissioner Jones, seconded by
Right.
Chair Wiedemann, is to continue the item to allow staff to clarify the procedure and either bring this item back at a future date if we determine that the current procedure is accurate, or adjust and process the application according to the appropriate procedure moving forward.
That's good. Can we have roll call vote?
Commissioner Wiedemann,
Yes.
Commissioner Jones,
Yes.
Chair Babini. I'm sorry,
No worries.
Commissioner Babini.
Yes.
Commissioner Purnell
Yes.
and Commissioner Pollan.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. And thank you very much. This was complicated, and but you do a beautiful job for your inns and your properties. So moving forward, what do we have left on the agenda? Well, I guess that's not much. Do we have any matters from staff?
We have no matters from staff other than to wish you all a happy holiday.
All right. And any matters from the commission today? Do you have anything around the timeline? Commissioner Parnell, you were wondering more or less about looking at our ordinances. You missed that meeting, so I was just wanting you to make sure.
I did watch the meeting.
No, that's not the point, but you had a question of timeline. Are we getting for the review of the ordinances?
Yeah, all I had mentioned was that I'm going to be on vacation for most of the month of June, and so in an ideal world, we'd wrap up by the end of May.
It'll be before June.
That's good. Great. Thank you.
Very
Or you'll die
affirmative,
trying,
Julia.
right? So any other matters from the commission today?
Happy holidays.
Yes, happy holidays to everybody. And with that, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, that was exhausting. I'm gonna go.